Hello, welcome back to Mountain Gym Card Collectibles. Hope you're having a great week so far. So today, I noticed a news clip on MSN News, and it was from our good buddy Geoff Wilson. And, it was a genuine news clip where he's being interviewed. And what is it about the sports card hobby in the USA in general where people believe if you have a lot of money, you must be an expert? All right. I've always asked myself this question because I've ran into it so often in my lifetime where you do meet people who have a lot of money and they make themselves to be experts and experienced in the field. But then eventually something will slip out and you go, you know what? This is a total joke. And we all know how many, card enthusiasts like to bend the knee to wealth breakers, Geoff Wilson, Michael Rubin, whoever, 1%. But you have to ask yourself, a deeper question about these people. Who are they, really? Like it says here, when someone pretends to be an experienced expert in something they just started, there are several terms that can be used to describe them depending on the nuance of their deception. Now, I'm not saying that Geoff Wilson is, deceiving anybody. But, there's some terms that, Google AI Overview pulled up that I really like, So I'll get into some of these terms. Why not? And I don't mean to hurt anyone's feelings. If you're a fan of Geoff Wilson, hey, you can do whatever you want. Anyway, charlatan. This term is often used to describe a person who makes elaborate, fraudulent claims about their skill or knowledge and implies a degree of deception and showmanship. Posier or poser. Now, that's a term I know quite well growing up. I used to skateboard, and you run into a lot of posers in the age of skateboarding, where they're making themselves out to be awesome boarders, but they really suck. Those are posers, anyway. These terms suggest someone who is putting on an act or affecting a certain manner to impress others or fit in. A dilettante. This term refers to an amateur who engages in an activity without serious intentions and pretends to have more knowledge than they possess, according to vocabulary.com. It often carries a negative connotation, implying a superficial interest and a lack of commitment. A xylist. This term describes someone who exhibits only superficial knowledge and presents themselves as a self-proclaimed expert with little real understanding. Pseudo-intellectual. This describes someone who pretends an interest in intellectual matters but lacks true understanding. Quack, more specific to the medical field. The quack is someone who pretends to have medical skill and promotes fraudulent or ignorant medical practices. And then we have this thing to do with the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's also worth noting the Dunning-Kruger effect, a cognitive bias where people with limited knowledge in a particular area overestimate their own competence. They lack the metacognition or the ability to think about their own thinking, to accurately assess their own skills. This can lead them to mistakenly believe they are experts even when they are novices. So when you look at someone like Geoff Wilson, he grew up. Apparently when he was growing up, he was in the sports cards, got out of them for many years. And now he is back in. I guess, he's tied with, his wealthy wife, from what I understand. So, things are looking pretty good for good old Geoff Wilson now, aren't they? But overall, you have to ask yourself, some questions in regards to who he really is. And then, we come to some leading experts, that Google AI Overview pulled up. And who are these experts? Well, Ken Golden, founder and CEO of Golden Auctions, a leading auction house for high-value collectibles, including sports cards and memorabilia. He's been involved in this collecting realm for a long time. You can't really say he hasn't, and he hasn't really left and then come back. John Boehner, senior grader at Professional Sports Authenticator, specializing in trading cards grading, has been involved in the sports card market since the early 1990s. That's, quite a few years. Joe Orlando, Executive Vice President, Sports at Heritage Auctions. He has been in the advanced collector sports cards and memorabilia for over 35 years. We have Dingyu, a trading card investment expert known for his expertise in high-value cards. He's recognized for his significant sales and deep understanding of the evolving market. I'm not sure who that is. Jeremy Lee, host of Sports Card Live, a YouTube show that features discussions with collectors, industry insiders, and content creators. He's been collecting cards since 1980. A lot of these people do have experience. And they list Michael Rubin, Steve Aoki. But then, of course, Geoff Wilson. I don't know what Geoff Wilson and why he's always popping up as an expert. Okay. And then Daryl Garner. Okay, so then we come to this. And this is an interview that Geoff Wilson did, with a news broadcast company. I'm not exactly sure who it is, but for one reason, he's pulling up on MSN News, like he's the big expert for trading cards, okay? But here in this interview, it says right here, you can read it for yourself. So I got back into it back in 2018. 2018, huh? Wow. We have experts with years and years and years of collecting knowledge, They've been collecting continually. Now, for me, I went through a rough streak from 2017 to 2021 because I basically became my dad's full-time nurse. I had to take care of him. I couldn't do much besides take care of him. After he passed away, I started to get back into things I liked, But I was involved in, collecting cards prior to that. I wasn't spending a ton of money doing it. I wasn't, putting my whole paychecks into it or anything. But yeah, I was collecting my cards. I was, back then, before my dad got sick, I was collecting DVDs. I still have a great DVD collection. Card collection, I've pretty much sold off. But I always keep restocking and reselling, whatever, I've been, involved in cards off and on, but more or less on since I, first started getting into it in 1986. If anything, you can't really do much when you're a full-time nurse, I wasn't really making much money either, because you can't go and work and make much money. But, I kind of, stepped back during that period. But, what gets me about this thing on MSN, is I'll just kind of fast forward here. And, this is just an interview that he did with some news place. Let me see if I can find, the host, whoever's hosting it. There she is. Okay. So I'm not exactly sure what news company that is, but it's clearly a news company. And obviously they went with what a lot of Americans do. They went with the money guy. Whoever's got a lot of money, he must be an expert. Even though he just flat out admitted in your interview, ma'am, whoever you are, I'll get back to it. And really the stuff he's just kind of shilling out is just such, broad information. Anyone could spit that stuff out, but this is really the hang up for me with this man. So I got back into it back in 2018. Now, right there, I'd be like, shut the interview down. What were you doing prior to that? Wait, you left the hobby when? In 89, 90, 91, 92, and you got back into it when 2018 when you had a lot of money. And hey, lucky for you, bud. And now you get to do all the interviews for the news companies, even over Ken Golden, even over like people who have been doing this a long time. I mean, I'd rather see an interview from like if you're gonna put someone on the news, put Neo on there. The guy's been doing cards forever, man. You know, it's just put a guy that's been doing it for a long time. You know, don't put some guy that's, well, I got back into it in 2018. Yeah, okay. And it all works out for you because you're a millionaire / billionaire. You get to have your cards at HQ, all your good stuff. Hey, good for you, Geoff. Good for you. I just wish that the world, you know, would see through it. Most of us do. Most people who are passionate about cards see through all the BS, you know. But I just wish that the media would get on the bandwagon. I wish, you know, Microsoft, Google would figure this out, you know. Do not keep putting this guy up as some expert. He has just more or less put himself out there. He's not an expert. Right in this interview, he put himself out there. He's not an expert. He isn't as devoted as, you know, a lot of people are. I mean, I watch other, you know, YouTube card shows, you know. Watched one yesterday. I forget where it was at. You know, just a few guys talking, but you could tell it was an older guy who's been doing cards for a long time. And you and I both know he's likely more of an expert than Geoff Wilson, but he's not a billionaire, you know. But his information would have been a lot better for an interview, in my opinion. Just anyone than Geoff Wilson. Because right there in this interview, I just keep going back to it. Shut this interview down. Right when he says this. Get someone else on there. I wish the hobby would figure it out as well, you know. The hobby likes to lift people on their shoulders and make hobby heroes out of wealthy people. But that doesn't mean that they're experts. It doesn't mean that they're devoted. It doesn't mean that they're experienced. And experience is very important, you know. You know, if I was interviewing Geoff, I'd ask him, okay, well, when did you get out of cards? Why did you get out of cards? Okay? And then why did you get back into cards in 2018? Did you just see an awesome, you know, way of making money, you know, and business opportunity? Hey, if you interviewed me, yeah, I briefly stepped out of cards from 2017, 2021. I didn't have any choice, you know. I mean, there wasn't anyone else taking care of my dad, and he was just, you know, he's on oxygen and all that, you know. He was just bad off, you know. But what would Geoff Wilson say? What would he say? That's just it, you know. Anyway, what's your opinion on this? How do you feel about, you know, mainstream media hyping up Geoff Wilson, you know, MSN, Google, whatever? Does he deserve it? I shared my opinion on it, you know. I just feel like he is who he is, and media will always bend the knee to these billionaires, but they're overlooking the most important thing when it comes to interviewing people about sports cards. One word: experience. You know, I mean, Jimi Hendrix, known for song, album, whatever. Are you experienced? What would Geoff Wilson say? Anyway, I'd like to thank my subscribers. I'd like to thank my new subscribers. And if you're a viewer and you haven't subscribed yet, hey, just click the button. It's 100% free. And I know I'm not getting 1 million views every day. Honestly, I don't care. I still am involved in doing what I do with sports cards. And I just like doing what I do. I wish I could have been more involved, you know, from when I had to step out, you know, basically, you know, late 2016 when my dad started getting sick. And I wish I could get those years back. I wish I could just get my years back from 2017 to 2021. Because, I mean, if you went through what I went through during that period, you'd understand. But anyway, hope you have a great day. I'm out of here. Bye.